An elder may come in and talk about being bothered or being disturbed in something that they don't like, but they won't say, "Oh, they're hitting me, they raped me or assaulted me," or they won't use those kind of terms. And so the piece that's so important is when they're saying something is going on, we have to stay present with them long enough to figure out what that something is. And part of that is that as we think about the generational difference, also for our tribal communities, there's a lot of modesty. And there's some of it's connected historically to traumas that occurred and violence that has occurred previously to the communities, and some of it's just the way we're taught to be as human beings. And so then it also becomes hard to describe those pieces. And then the generational difference that says we don't talk about our body parts that way.
There may be things that an older adult survivor is not well versed in having conversations about, particularly coming from a generation where certain things maybe were not spoken about as freely as they are now. And so sometimes it's really important to really pace oneself as an advocate and allow those conversations to be moved very slowly and carefully, and use the language that that older adult survivor is more comfortable talking about. The idea is to build a rapport and to work collaboratively and not move on my timetable, but to move on theirs.
I think there's a big stigma about aging. Everything is about youth. Everything is about new, modern, recreated. This is better, this is best. And nowhere does anybody say, no, you know what, the past is good, and let's try to recreate that, or let's try to bring it back to these old ways. You never hear that. You never hear that in advertising. You never see that in promoted politics, nothing. Age is cast aside. And I think part of it has just been a wave that has been taking place where what will the market hold? But also, I think that there's a disconnect sometimes with young people. They don't know the older adults in their lives. They don't have the connections like certain cohorts have had, where they knew their grandparents or they knew older people in their communities.
When you're dealing with older adults that have been abused, you have to realize they have a story, and it's more to it than just this incident occurred, right? Many of them were raised in generational situations where the man was the head of the household. What he said stood. Many of the older victims that I know that are women talk about just this generational thing of staying in your place, staying in pocket, as this one woman said to me one time, not stepping out of what you are supposed to be as a woman, and that is support. What we see as abuse, other people may not see as abuse. They may not see the emotional and psychological piece of name calling and crazy making, as we say, as an issue. Understanding that it's a journey when you're dealing with older victims of abuse that are elders. They many times don't want to tell anyone this story. There's shame behind this.
When we live in such an ageist society where we discredit people who are older or look older, that lack of respect is just prevalent in every sector that they encounter. And it's also in those personal relationships. So I think that that's the big disservice that we do to our older folks, is that they don't get listened to and given the respect of just being able to fill out the narrative too. They have a lot to say. And so even in providing some of the abuse support, there's history attached, and giving space for that full history to play out is really important, because it does craft the dynamics of what they've experienced in a unique way.